Kareem Ali TV here of the Are You Serious podcast, where we debate various topics through the lens of hip hop culture, also mythical matchups of various proportions. And today it came up a few weeks back. We did an episode that featured the greatest little men of all time, the greatest small guards in NBA history. And the matchup was between Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, Allen Iverson, and Isaiah Thomas. But since then, it's been populated in the news since they moved James Harden to the point guard for the Brooklyn Nets, and they shifted Kyrie Irving to the shooting guard. Kyrie Irving has been putting up dominant performances, dominant numbers, and the question arose in the media: who was better? Who was the better little man between Kyrie Irving and Allen Iverson? That's the question. Now, many of you say, well, the new pundits of the sport, the students of the game of basketball would say, well, of course it's Kyrie Irving. The game evolves. People develop. They're better now than they were before. Then the other people would say, Kareem Ali, are you serious? Are you serious? If that's the question, then it has to be the answer. The answer to that question has to be the answer. How dare you compare someone like Kyrie Irving to Allen Iverson? And so let me tell you what Kareem Ali thinks about this. If you take Kyrie Irving, I remember back in the mid-90s, you saw that it was the rise of the N1 culture. And people were saying that, oh, these guys are pretty good, but they couldn't do that in the NBA. Well, Kyrie Irving is doing those things in the NBA. He's simply spectacular from a night-in, night-out basis. And if you want to be honest, in every facet of the game, when you're talking about basketball skill, when you're talking about footwork, when you're talking about shooting ability from the mid-range, from three-point land, ball handling ability, creating space, not just with footwork, but with tremendous ball handling skills, Kyrie Irving may be better than Allen Iverson in every category. Kyrie Irving also has an NBA championship. Kyrie Irving may have been someone who could arguably have won the NBA Finals MVP. He hit the biggest shot of all time, maybe in playoff history by some people's accounts, that saved the great NBA Finals fix of 2016. Maybe the answer is Kyrie Irving. But then you got to think about it. The only category that Allen Iverson is really superior to Kyrie Irving is that he was a superior athlete. But is that really true? Because Allen Iverson, the answer, when you start to compare the eras, Allen Iverson was scoring in the era where it was hard to get a bucket. When Kyrie is playing, the game is wide open. You can't touch anybody. There's no physicality, so there's no intimidation. So no one is really testing your skills. But when Allen Iverson was playing, the game was very physical. The game was played at a slower pace, a slower tempo. So you're scoring and getting those 31, 32 points a game that Allen Iverson was averaging, 27, 28 points a game against defenses, half-court defenses who were already set and geared to stop you. There was no up and down. There was no extra possessions. Allen Iverson did that. Allen Iverson also was the player who perhaps had the superior heart. We don't know. Kyrie Irving may not show up some games. Not show up because he's intimidated, but just not show up because he just doesn't want to be there. Allen Iverson played game in and game out with tremendous heart and passion. He led a team to the NBA Finals. He wasn't able to get the victory playing against Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. But Allen Iverson at one point was considered not the best player in the NBA, but definitely the best perimeter player in the NBA in 2001 until Kobe Bryant took that reign for the next decade as the world's best player and the best perimeter player after that point. But, oh, man, it's a very tough call. Kyrie Irving, one of the most skilled basketball players of all time. I have him, maybe he's very Kobe-esque. I have him number 2 in terms of all-time skill level for a basketball player behind Kobe Bryant. But in terms of heart and will, Allen Iverson, in terms of his killer instinct, his determination, he's in the category with Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan in terms of being a killer. So it's a really, really tough call. Is it Kyrie Irving? Is it Allen Iverson? Kareem Ali, I'll let you decide. We'll pause 1 second with a brief word from our sponsors. EOJ and Pan's Alpha and Omega, 100% all natural men's beard grooming kit for only $49.95. It comes with beard balm, beard oil, and wash. Start your day looking your best from beginning to the end. A man is a man from start to finish. Alpha and Omega. What type of man do you want to be? Listen, Kareem Ali TV, the Are You Serious podcast. Kareem Ali may have to print a retraction when we talk about who the greatest little man of all time is. Kareem Ali usually always takes Isaiah Lord Thomas III. It's Zeke. The answer is Zeke. He beat Magic Michael Larry in the same playoffs. The only player who's done that of that type of caliber, in my recollection, was Dirk Nowitzki, who beat Kobe Bryant. He beat a trio of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook in the playoffs, on his way to defeating embarrassing LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. But Isaiah Thomas, the tremendous heart, the ball handling ability, the skills, the ability to defend and just understanding how to win. I always felt like Isaiah Thomas was the greatest little man. But watching some NBA games this season and seeing what's going on, I used to question Steph Curry. I used to question if he was tough enough. I knew he had skills. We're playing in this era. It's kind of hard to see when you can't really be physical with a guy. What type of skills do you really have when you have to overcome that detriment, overcome that challenge of guys really challenging you? But Steph Curry has showed it this season. Some of the offensive scoring feats from what, by all accounts, is probably the greatest shooter of all time. I mean, 40-point games, 7, 8 3-pointers in a night at times. Steph Curry just willing these Golden State Warriors to be better than they're really supposed to be. I mean, just being a really, really dominant player, being about two inches taller than Isaiah Thomas. I would have to say that I'm starting to lean towards Stephen Curry. I mean, you can't sleep on the 3 championships and 2 regular season MVPs. I mean, it's really hard to say. Zeke has an NBA Finals MVP, but Kareem Ali doesn't know. I mean, and another thing that we forgot to mention, how do we have this conversation without mentioning Chris Paul? Like, every place Chris Paul goes to, every team, he changes the culture of that team. Chris Paul elevates every team he's been on. He hasn't been able to get the big one done. Allen Iverson wasn't able to get the big one done. Kyrie Irving has, but Kyrie Irving played, and Steph Curry's played with some awfully great players. I mean, the King James, Kevin Love, Kevin Durant, James Harden, for Kyrie Irving. Steph Curry, we know who he's played with some of those great Golden State Warrior teams, and Kevin Durant was featured on a few of them, 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs for KD, playing with Steph Curry. Allen Iverson never had that. Allen Iverson had great defensive teams, coached by Larry Brown, a great defensive unit with Eric Snow, Dikembe Mutombo, Aaron McKee, Tyrone Hill, but they didn't have the offensive firepower. He never really had the offensive firepower that Kyrie Irving has had, or Isaiah Thomas or Steph Curry, to rise to that level. And Chris Paul, I don't believe Chris Paul had either. I mean, he had James Harden, but the system with Mike D'Antoni is just not one that's usually conducive to winning. How do we not add Chris Paul to the conversation for greatest little man of all time? Shame on you, Kareem Ali. Shame on all of us who have this discussion and never add Chris Paul to the conversation of greatest little man. His skill level, his ability to run off a pick and roll, his ability to split defenders off the dribble or keep a live dribble, his mid-range jump shooting ability coming off a high screen and roll or a pick and slip is pretty much second to none. And the ability also to pass with both hands. And then no one ever talks about Chris Paul as a defender, a great on-ball defender, better than many of the other people that we named. I mean, Kyrie plays defense virtually at all. Iverson, because of his size, was limited on the defensive end, but Allen Iverson was someone who would get a lot of skills because he was a great team defensive player, and his anticipation skills were next level. Steph Curry, not a great defender, but Isaiah Thomas, a very, very good defender. He led one of the greatest defensive teams of all time, just the motivation and leadership. So maybe this is a conversation that comes down to leadership. I don't know. Kareem Ali TV, the Are You Serious podcast. I'll let you decide. Who's the greatest little man of all time? In 3, 2, 1. Are you ready? What's my name? What's my name? Say Kareem Ali. Say Kareem Ali. You're listening to
Are you serious?
The Hip Hop Debate Show.
Okay, so hear me out.
The official podcast of Kareem Ali. In about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. Kareem Ali TV. Yo, this is the Are You Serious podcast, the official podcast of Kareem Ali, where we debate various topics, usually through the lens of hip-hop culture. But today we're going to talk some hoops. I got from Detroit, Jermaine Curry, a recurring guest, community organizer, and hip-hop historian, in my opinion. Then we got Victor Rogers. You know him, Slick Vic Low, Slankster Hughes, all those niggas. Great poet and MC out of Pittsburgh, hailing from Baltimore City. Basically,
let's be clear, hip-hop culture permeates throughout basketball.
It definitely does. It definitely
That's
does.
like the sixth element. I say Islam is the knowledge of self is the fifth, basketball is the sixth. You can't separate.
I can't. I disagree with you most of the time, but on that topic, you would not be. Why are you drinking hot sauce, man?
Breaking a nice container of water. Some type of Arabic word on the bottom.
So how black is this guy? He's the nigga drinking hot sauce. Some people got hot sauce in
their
their bag.
The halal one.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Right.
So listen. Today we're gonna bring the age-old question that to me used to be easy, but now is being challenged by a current player. Who is the greatest little man of all time? Not necessarily point guard, but little man. And hailing into that, we have the original ISIAH Thomas III, Isaiah Lord Thomas III, Zeke, who won 2 championships with the Detroit Pistons back in 1989 and 1990. We have Allen Iverson, who made a big impact on the culture of basketball with his hip-hop influence, and really one of the most talented players I've ever seen pound for pound. I mean, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were better, but maybe because they were 6'6" and he wasn't. I mean, it may just be that. And then you also have Steph Curry, who, for my money, who may be the greatest shooter we've ever seen in NBA history. I mean, granted, it's different eras and people didn't shoot three-pointers as much in the 80s and 90s, so it's hard to compare, but just his technique and ability, and also the fact that he won, 3 championships and a couple league MVPs, who I don't always put as much weight on, but for someone 6'3" to do that, dominate the game that he did, and be considered the best player, you have to kind of consider him. And so I'm going to go first on this. In about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. Listen, I like all these players. Kareem Ali does. Allen Iverson maybe had some of the most talented of the 3 players as far as just being a pure offensive force and being able to dominate the game, a game of giants, a game where Shaquille O'Neal and Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant were some of the best players, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady. Allen Iverson shined among the stars, won MVP in 2001, and dragged a defensively constructed team all the way to the NBA Finals to lose to the eventual champion, the Los Angeles Lakers. The heart, the determination, the drive of Allen Iverson cannot be overstated. But in my opinion, the greatest little man of all time is still Isaiah Thomas. Because to me, in one of the most competitive eras of basketball, you can't overstate that this man, he defeated Magic, Michael, and Larry in the same playoff series and beat them more than they beat him. So I'm going to go with Isaiah Thomas, who actually had the offensive ability to do some of the things that Allen Iverson did, some of the things that Steph Curry did, but also Isaiah Thomas was a much better defender than both players. What say you, Jermaine, from Detroit?
Just because I'm from Detroit, I mean, I'm a bad boy.
I didn't say that. I expect for you to say something ignorant and all. Go ahead.
I was a Bulls fan growing up. You know what I'm saying? So, as a kid, I used to cry when Michael Jordan used to go down the lane and they try to take not just his head off, but his whole torso.
Those were love taps.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, love taps.
He's still crying over it. Yeah, he can't get over it.
It hurts.
He's mad because Isaiah beat him, and he can't take it to this day.
They beat him up.
Isaiah, man, because he lost. Like, how y'all beat them 3 times in a row? You lose 1 time and you hate them for the rest of your life. That's something. But anyways, you already know where I'm going. I'm going with the cook, with the chef.
The chef, okay. And why? Why?
Only because the trend, as far as all around skill level. Plus, Steph ain't really back in the day. 6'3" wasn't really considered a small guard. Back 6'3" back then. You know what I'm saying? It was a bigger. He is legit 6'3",
Yeah.
6'3", you was a lead guard back in
you
the
was a 2 guard back. You was like almost a big guard back then.
Yeah.
I
Ricky
kinda really
Pierce, Dana Barrows, Hershey
Dana Barrows
Hawkins.
was 5'10".
Yeah.
I thought both of
He
crazy.
was. But Hershey Hawkins was 6'3", or listed at 6'3". Some guys are overlisted.
Yeah, but Steph ain't.
He's a legitimate 6'3".
6'3". So I really ain't really never get into the penciling in to the smaller cats. You know what I'm saying? Like Iverson is by far probably the greatest athlete next to Jordan that we have. The Iverson. You know what I'm saying? As far as pound, like just athletic, can do anything under the sun, just for his size. You know what I'm saying? Like Iverson, pound for pound, if Iverson was 6'2", but we know like he was oversized. Like I'm 5'9" with shoes on, 5'9", like 5'9 and a half with Timbs. Like he probably about this much more taller than me.
He's 5'11" and a half.
Yeah, he like
165, maybe
right.
170 tops.
He can do everything. He can jump with the best of them. He was quicker than everybody.
Long arms.
He would dunk. He was dunking like cats. We weren't used to that. You know what I'm saying? Like we used to see short cats dunk, but they weren't dunking all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like, every game. So as far as like little bitty guys, Zika's legit 6'1", 6'2". You know what I'm saying? He legit. But Steph is just like, I think because of this era, this is one of those eras where you don't appreciate, like because you already know where I'm about to go. A certain demographic of fans appreciates great people of greatness. Like this era is so whack that they overhype one player but shit on everybody else. You know what I'm saying? So,
it wasn't like that.
A little more. Name names.
You know, it started with a brown and end with a sexuals. Them guys.
Wait a minute. You don't think that in the 2 eras before that, in the Michael Jordan era, that they don't elevate Michael Jordan to make it seem like no one else ever played?
Right.
That's the niggas who saw basketball. That the thing about it, we still like because of that. Even because of that, when the transcended the Kobe era to the LeBron era, like that's because the internet, right? Like, we already know the internet. But the thing about it, even with Jordan, we saw him growing up, right? So we saw what he had to earn to get there. Even with Steph, right? Nobody seen the 2015. Nobody in life. Anybody who say they saw the 2015 Warriors come where they coming from, they lying. Because they lost in the first round the year before, right?
I didn't see it.
I saw Mark Jackson coaching his ass off. I saw that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not a Mark Jackson fan, but I mean to think about it with Steph, like once he got healthy, the whole league just changed, right? It changed. The thing about it with both,
we're in the era of the super teams now, you know.
But he
because of a lot of that.
He created. Like he was drafted. Draymond wasn't even playing like that.
They built their team organically. They did.
Yeah. No, but the response to that team, the way it was built, that team was so well put together. The response was the super teams.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me just interject here.
And then the response to the super teams was Golden State creating their own version of a super team. Adding KD, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about.
Do you have something to say, Victor, before I go? Because I got to put a stop to this because I only heard this man say Isaiah Thomas once, and there's some nuances and some idiosyncrasies that are being missed here about when we compare eras.
Right.
Well, get to it, brother. Goddamn, we only got like 35 minutes.
Oh, my bad. The thing about Isaiah, I think I appreciate him more now that I'm older than I was when I was a kid again because I was bullshit. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, when it comes down to just the era of transcending the eras, like you have to include, like in the 2000s, you cannot say Iverson name in the top 3. You know what I'm saying? From far as Kobe, Shaq, Iverson, then you gonna say Garnett, Duncan, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But you got to say that. In the 80s, shit, man, it was 80s live as hell, man. You got to say Zeke somewhere in there. But the 80s was live. That's an underrated era. That era was the livest of the livest. You know what I'm saying? But this era, it's only 2 people you can really. I mean, 3. Steph, KD and LeBron.
What about Kawhi Leonard in the last 4 or 5 years?
I think the hype around Kawhi is kind of
okay. So let me and Victor, we haven't really gotten to you yet. What would you like to say about this topic? You haven't really chosen or decided. I know you have something to say.
So I would categorize each of them in 3 different significant ways. I think that it speaks directly to each of their individual greatness in the eras they played in. I think Allen Iverson is by far the most talented out of these 3.
I don't disagree with that.
Some people don't understand the kind of freak athlete Allen Iverson was. Like if you saw his footage when he was playing like option quarterback in high school, like it's ridiculous. He could have been he could have been Michael Vick if he really wanted to, if he wasn't so good at basketball. In the same way that Randy Moss could have been an NBA player if he wasn't so good at football. Like that's the kind of freak of an athlete he was. And if Allen Iverson could go on a court right now and make everyone look like a peon. At any random playground. So I think he's the most talented out of the 3. I would say that Steph Curry will ultimately probably be looked at as the best out of the 3 when it's all said and done, because he has a rare combination that is more prevalent in how players are being developed and are about to be developed more so. If you look at the AAU ranks and how they're developing in the last decade, and where it used to be like you were either really good creating your shot off the dribble or you were a really good shooter. It's like it was rare that you would develop into someone who was really good at both. Steph Curry is one of the best at both, at creating off the dribble and just being a marksman shooting the ball. And the fact that he can do both of those, he can create off the dribble and then pull up and shoot, or set shot, or he can create for others off the dribble or go to the hole and score among the trees, even though he's smaller. Like, he's the best at being really good at all of those that we may have ever seen. And I think because of that, when it's all said and done, he will be looked at as the best out of these 3. When you look at numbers, when you look at accomplishments, when you look at overall skill set, it's mind-boggling. Steph Curry has like the set shot abilities of Steve Kerr and better, but with like the ball handle and the dexterity off the dribble of like an Isaiah Thomas or an Allen Iverson, and that is ridiculous. That is just ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous skill set since Kevin Durant became a Kevin Garnett body with a Kobe Bryant type of offensive game. It's unparalleled. But then I would have to say for Isaiah Thomas at this moment I still think is the greatest, the greatest, the most accomplished, the highest on the Mount Olympus of basketball heroes out of those 3, because plain and simple, he beat Bird, Magic, and Jordan during the era of Bird, Magic, and Jordan. And who else did that?
Nobody.
No one. And he was the leader of those bad boy Pistons. Like, he was their offensive catalyst, and he kept things balanced on the defense by being able to cover whoever the other team's catalyst was. And so it can't be overstated just how Isaiah Thomas was not the most talented, but so talented enough and so fundamentally developed enough in the Chicago basketball mecca of the time when he came out of Chicago. Like, that's those days of high school basketball in Chicago was people to this day. Like, so, I mean, I know a little bit about the history of high school basketball because, you know, I played in some pretty talented circles coming up, including I played against LeBron, and it was from day one, you can tell that this motherfucker was a youth. Like, he was 2 years younger than us, and it was ridiculous. And so, to me, when you look at how Isaiah Thomas came out of that era of playing in the Catholic private leagues in Chicago, where they was basically just trying to find all the best black players in the city and then giving them scholarships to come to these big Catholic schools and creating these super programs. He was leading this team to the state championship, and to the point where people were like, "Where's the next Isaiah Thomas?" You watch Hoop Dreams, and they're literally looking for the next Isaiah Thomas in the inner city streets of Chicago. And so he was like the Jesus Shuttlesworth of that heyday of Chicago high school basketball. People still talk about the Whitney Young teams from that era Whitney Young High School, like coming out and destroying teams, but Isaiah Thomas was like, like the Jesus Shuttlesworth of that heyday of that high school era in Chicago that was such a high level. So he came out of that, and so his game was so well developed playing against good players that when he got to the NBA, he wasn't shook. It was like he playing against 3 of the best players to ever live, and he led his team to victories against those players' teams.
So let Kareem Ali interject real quick. We're going to talk about the different eras. So Allen Iverson, I agree with both of you. He was the most talented, the most singular talent of the 3 players. I think Steph Curry may have developed the highest skill levels. But Isaiah Thomas, let me tell you something about Zeke. In terms of his intangibles, his mental toughness, and his understanding and ability to win, I think is greater than the other 2 players. I don't think his teams that he had, the Bad Boys, weren't nearly as talented or offensively as gifted as the Steph Curry-led Golden State Warrior teams. And he wasn't even always the best player on that. At one point, it was Kevin Durant who was the best player for 2 of those championships. Isaiah Thomas, when the game was on the line, when it got thick, when it got down to the pressure moments and situations, he shined through. I can't say the same thing about Steph Curry. Isaiah Thomas has a Finals MVP in 1990 versus Clyde Drexler and the Portland Trail Blazers. Steph Curry doesn't have any. And you see in big moments when Steph Curry doesn't always come through, sometimes he'll fold. Listen, I'm not finished yet. I don't believe that Steph Curry and the skill level that some of the players have today, I think some NBA players today are more skilled than they've ever been. But if you take them and transport them back to a game that was much more physical, before they changed the rules, before when you could hand check, when you could bump the cutter, I don't think you guys realize that about 99 or 2000, they changed the rule that when a player is off the ball, they cut through the lane, where once before you could bump them and bully them. They restricted that rule where you couldn't touch the cutter. And this is one of the things that allowed Allen Iverson to start to shine, to be able to freely move through the lane. You couldn't do that in the 80s or the early 90s when Isaiah Thomas was playing. The way they changed the rules allows for smaller guards to dominate to a higher level, which is why you see guys like Damian Lillard and Trae Young and these guys that are going off for big numbers. They wouldn't have been able to do that in the time period where Isaiah Thomas ruled the land in 89 and 90. If Kevin Johnson or someone was playing today, his numbers would be astronomical, and he was a 2010 guy then. I don't think Steph Curry or Allen Iverson could do what they're doing today or what they did in their time period versus back in 1989.
I never, ever agree with that. I think a great player will always be great.
Now, I said they wouldn't be great, but the numbers wouldn't be the same. For example,
what you mean the numbers wouldn't be the same? Like, you gotta think about efficiency too. Like, we forget about the importance of the reason the Warriors became so great, right? Because they was extremely efficient. Like, and that was built around Steph.
Jermaine.
Same thing. No, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna finish what I got to say. And I'm gonna say this: a lot of times where Iverson wasn't as successful because he wasn't that efficient in clutch moments. Like he had a clutch gene where he wasn't scared at all.
True.
But he would take some of the dumbest shots you would ever take.
He was a volume scorer, but it was effective. Exactly. He left everything,
He left it on the court, but at the same time, it couldn't resonate to championships. Think about when Steph got healthy, right? Even with Zeke, like Zeke wasn't the most efficient, but when Zeke in little 5, 6, 7 minutes in the clutch area of the game, Zeke used to go nuts, right?
You couldn't be as efficient back then if someone's holding you with one arm, and you're a little guard.
That was like the height of that, but the 80s was all of that. We can go back until you look at the stats. All of that, the 80s was the height of scoring. It was the height of scoring.
More than now?
More than now. You can go back and look at all them shooters from back in the 80s. Tiki Vandeweghe, Kelly, like all the people, like all them shooters, right? I just named people like people don't even know about no more.
People didn't even take the same amount of 3-pointers, man.
Exactly. They was taking mid-range.
They was taking mid-range shots, so of course they was.
Right, a mid-range. Anybody play basketball, the hardest shot to make it's like you got to be real skilled to make a mid-range shot.
A mid-range shot has always been my best shot.
Right,
listen,
but practice.
Hear me out though. The numbers wouldn't be the same. So take someone like Wilt Chamberlain who averaged 50 and 25 for a season. The rules were different back then. It was no 3-second rule. You could hand checks so you could hold, but it was no 3-point line. So it gave more credence to the big man and rim protection, or people that could score close to the basket, because the game was played like 15 or 16 feet in. Now, if you take Wilt Chamberlain and you take him 20 or 30 years later and put him in the future, Wilt would still be Wilt. He would still be dominant. He's still one of the greatest athletes to ever play. But because of the way the game is played and the pace of the game, I don't think Wilt Chamberlain will be able to average 50 points a game and get 25 rebounds. The people of the 60s, Bill Russell was averaging 18 rebounds a game. The only person that's done that since then with consistency has been Dennis Rodman. I think 1 or 2 years when he played for San Antonio, maybe. He averaged 18 a game.
Yeah,
one of those years in like 95.
With the Bulls, he was like 15, 16.
Yeah, 15, 16, but no one. But that's all he was doing. Wilt was averaging 50 and 25. And there were like 3 or 4 centers that were averaging 19, 20 rebounds a game. It was a different game. More shots went up. It was more opportunities for rebounds.
More shots. You go back and look at the percentages.
I know.
It was missing more shots.
They were missing more shots.
So, and then it was more games played between the same teams. So you got to I personally am not, you know what I'm saying? When I study the game, I don't try to discredit errors. Like the reason a winner is a winner. Like I will always keep Bill Russell in because if you take Bill Russell off the team, they was not going to win the championship.
Bill Russell knew how to win. He knew how to get teams to win and motivate players.
Think about Steph, like these people, like to have somebody like, that's why like Steph, like even with Duncan, like as I got older, right? Like I respect Dunk, like I love Duncan in college, but as I hate the Spurs, they started trying to sell us the Spurs. Let them say back in the day. But as I got older, leadership.
You mad because they beat the Pistons?
No, not really. I'm mad at Rasheed Wallace, dumbass. But
exactly,
you know, that's who I'm mad at. I would never.
Why would you leave? Why would you?
I don't know why.
I was a big Pistons fan during that era, because you know Pittsburgh. We never had a franchise unless you count Pittsburgh Pisces and the Fisher City of Pittsburgh, but so I always follow my favorite player, whatever team my favorite player was on. And Rasheed was my favorite player from the Blazers on to the Pistons. And
what a mental lapse!
I was a huge Pistons fan, and I remember waiting for that Game 7, being so hyped. We about to get 2 in a row, and then I'm just like, what are you? Why the last person?
And they said, do not leave him open. And I was sitting there, I was a going to work fan more than I was a Bad Boy fan. I was really that fan. That was me. You know, that's my era. So I'm looking at this, and I said, this is sheet. And I said, watch sheet. I kept looking at it. I said, watch sheet. And he did exactly what I knew he was going to do.
Yeah, he used to always hedge off. But you don't hedge off. You don't hedge off.
Robert Ory didn't even wake up to the last 4 minutes. He didn't even try to play to the last 4 minutes.
Last 4 minutes, bro. He wasn't doing nothing. And then Larry Brown said,
Nightmare.
do not leave your man. He said, don't leave your man. Anyways, go back to the stuff thing. You know what I'm saying? I think this because of I don't agree with the whole Steph ain't clutch. I remember before Kevin Durant got there, you know what I'm saying?
My thing is that he's not clutch, just not as intense or as determined as someone like Isaiah Thomas. I think Isaiah Thomas has a higher level of will than someone like Steph Curry. For example, when you put the physicality on Steph Curry, like what Matthew Dellavedova did through the first 4 games of the 2015 finals, it clearly affected Curry. And that defense that they were allowing him to play was similar to some of the defenses that were played in the late 80s and early 90s against Isaiah and some of the small guards that may have restricted them from shooting high percentages and averaging 25 or 27 points a game.
You know how much Steph averaged that series?
Quite a bit.
26.5.
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. Matthew Dellavedova made him struggle. It wasn't until like game 5 when he started to break out where he figured it out.
But he had a playoff every playoffs, somebody go like it's always you always seen it where somebody gonna shoot like have 35 points and shoot 10 for 56.
The defenses are more stingier. It's harder to get easier shots. That's true. But my point is that over Iverson and over Curry, Isaiah Thomas knew how to win and lead teams to championships because Allen Iverson didn't even want to practice half the time. I don't think he took the game as serious. He didn't work out as often as some of the other players did. I don't think he weight trained and did some of the things that was available to him. He relied too much on his talent. and not necessarily on his work ethic to take him to another level. I believe Isaiah Thomas was a better leader than both players. Like, for example, Isaiah Thomas is the second greatest point guard of all time. There may be people that are more talented, in my opinion. You think it's someone else? You think it's Steph? I don't think so. I think it's still Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas is a better defensive player than both Allen Iverson and Steph Curry. He's more of a two-way player, so I think I would give Isaiah the lead. There are people that are more talented than Magic Johnson, may have more skills than Magic Johnson, but they don't have the IQ of Magic Johnson or the leadership ability of Magic Johnson.
Part of winning, and intangibles is a major part of basketball.
And Isaiah has those intangibles.
The thing about Steph Curry, though, that is like, and both an intangible and a testament to his skill set is though, a player like that, usually this is only works with shooters. But again, because he's a shooter who is also so skilled with the ball in his hands, it's Steph Curry, you can bother him and keep him nearly dormant for a long period of time. But all he has to do is catch fire for a short period of time, and he could doom your whole team.
Jermaine, whose flat top would rule in '89? Is what I'm saying. If Steph Curry was playing in '89, man, Joe Dumars would be so in his shorts, they would run under him and intimidate him from taking some of those shots that he was taking.
I think the greatest players that's why I really don't buy that LeBron couldn't play in that era. I think
he would dominate.
The greatest players will
center and
they will adjust.
They will, but they would have to adjust their game. The stuff you're seeing them doing now, I don't think he would be able to do with ease.
What you're saying?
Let's say Alex English, right? Like, we forget about a certain great
25 points a game.
Alex English, right? He wasn't an aggressive player. You know what I'm saying? And he won, like, Denver used to win a lot of games back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't a great
under Doug Moe with that fast offense, that expedited style, yeah.
Right. And the Steph thing about it is that he don't have the skill level of Steph. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, if anybody who studied the game, you know what I'm saying? Like, if we studied the game, you would know, like, you would look at certain great players in that era. Like, and you wouldn't, who was somebody super duper, like a super duper star was like, Chris Mullin. Let's say Chris Mullin. Chris Mullin, right? You know, in this era, everybody say, oh man, he would come off the bench. Like, you are so damn.
That's not true. I mean, if you're a great player, you'll be great in any era. What I'm saying is that your numbers will be different because they call the game differently. The rules are different. You have to adjust. And I think Isaiah, you have to adjust.
I have to agree with Jermaine's overall point, though, because when you're looking at how, to me, people always say, well, certain players, the Hardens and the KDs of the day wouldn't be able to play in certain eras. It's more so, it's not that they wouldn't be able to play, it just would be different kinds of players. Because they have the talent, but they would just develop based off the game. Like, people think, oh, they couldn't go back then in the 80s and do all the stuff they're doing now. No, it's a completely different game. Players don't even develop the same way, but they would be different kinds of players for that era. KD would probably be more physical because he'd have to be. Harden would take less shots from the outside because the game, the style of the game, and how players regarded
other ways to score. I'll tell you that.
Them to develop different. They're just as skilled or more skilled as a lot of the primary players who came up through the ranks back then. But because of the way the game was played, those players had to develop into different kinds of players. And it would be no different for them because of how the game is played. He's overrated because in this era, you can play that style, take a huge volume of shots. But even already with the Nets, his amount of shots is like half that because he's playing to the strengths of his team. Where before he was just dribble man. The way his coach designed the offense was for him to dribble a lot and then take a bunch of shots.
Anybody who plays for Mike D'Antoni's going to put up numbers.
He's actually using more of his skills now, but than he was with Van Gunn, with Mike D'Antoni.
It's like it was when he was with OKC.
The system was so one dimensional. He wanted to leave because he was tired of playing that way. It was making him look one dimensional.
And for the
different eras dictate different ways the game gets played, which
That's exactly what I said. That's what I said.
Let's say the 2000s to 2000, like that's one of, like, me personally, that's the worst era of basketball to me.
What era?
Skill wise, the 2000s. Like, it was some of the worst basketball I ever seen in my 675 to 67 should not be no damn grown.
That sounds like the 90s. That's the 90s.
That was the 2000s until what's my man, when they changed the rules And when Phoenix started running up and down the floor, when Dallas started blowing up, like
that was the 2000s.
Right.
You talking about the early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s. I'm talking about 90. Because it wasn't.
Because 95, 96 is when the scores start getting really low.
90, like 97, 98. Like we're like right before Jordan retired. It's about 2003, 2004, really. You know what I'm saying? Because Phoenix was the only one running up and down the floor like that.
2005 is when the switch happened. We started talking about after 2004.
You get those Sacramento in there, they was fun to watch, but
they were an anomaly.
The efficiency was horrific.
Well, in the
Larry
2000s,
Bird got the Pacers to the finals in that era.
Yeah. They were a good team, but in the 2000s, it was some of the best defensive schemes we've ever seen. Defensively,
brother, like somebody like Tracy, like I go back, I thought Tracy McGrady was cold. Tracy McGrady's his efficiency was terrible.
Yeah, I mean it was still one-on-one play, but defensively, the 2000s had some of the most complex defenses we've ever seen, and it's culminated. It's culminated by the 2008, 2010 Boston Celtics because what happened was when they changed to the zone defenses to stop Shaq early on, teams didn't know how to run it. But by the time you got to Detroit, you had a matchup man-to-man defensive zone where people will load up a side. And it would cut down on the one-on-one Allen Iverson type of play, which is why I was always so big on Kobe Bryant, his skill level, because he was able to score against those defenses. And if you go back and look at some of those tapes, it was loaded up 2 or 3 guys against some of these people, and he was still able to play one-on-one. And I just thought that was amazing. And the Boston Celtics was the greatest defensive team that I think I've ever seen, the Kevin Garnett-led Boston Celtics teams. Now, after
the Detroit Pistons teams were incredible.
The Detroit Pistons teams with Ben Wallace and Sheed, and that was another great
But see, what happened, if you look at it historically, and you look at it from a overall holistic development standpoint, what happened was that when those defensive schemes became so complex that it slowed the games and the scoring down a lot, the league didn't like it because it messed with how their product was sold. Exactly. It wasn't as exciting to audiences. And so they changed the rules so that the offensive output would heighten.
And they do that in sports all the time. In sports in general, they do that.
I mean,
so it's like, how can we make our game more exciting? How do you make the game more exciting? We need more points. So we need to change the rules enough to make points easier to score.
Now every game is an all-star game.
The same thing with football and how to spread offenses and all the passing. Now it's like you don't even have to have a quality running back anymore. It's like if you do, you're gonna win the Super Bowl. But it's the same.
Make your point, brother. Make your point, Jamal.
But the skill level, that's what I'm saying. But the skill level is not as advanced as we think it is. You know what I'm saying? Like because it's a whole era of just athletes. Like the 2000s was a whole era of athletes, and then this era is more so into shooters. So they become better. They're better with their jump shots. So we concentrate on the shooting, but a lot of times it's a lot of bad decisions. So it's a lot of bad decision making in this era.
Right.
And that's why I personally, from me watching it growing up, the mid 80s to the early 90s. Almost mid to
about 84 to 93, which is when they changed the playoff structure, was probably the best era of basketball for me as well.
Because it was so skilled.
It was skilled, and it was defensive efficiency, and it was offense, the pace of the game.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was extremely high scoring.
Okay.
Like extremely high scoring. You know what I'm saying? So that the whole.
And you guys are making my point about Isaiah Thomas for me.
No, I mean, I'm not saying he's not, but I'm saying at the same time, we can't discredit. I don't like this era, like recently, how this thing about Steph ain't really that nigga. You know what I'm saying?
No, Steph is that guy. I mean, you're seeing it now. I mean, last year I would have said that he couldn't have carried the team by himself with no weapons like Allen Iverson, but because he always gets injured when he's put in those situations. But this year, Steph has proven me wrong. He's unbelievable. I think by the end, I agree with you that Steph Curry will be the greatest little man of all time, but that's all the time we have today.
I think he might already be the greatest shooter.
I agree.
He's the greatest shooter, but he will.
I like to always notice what is the trends that are coming in basketball, and mark my words, the next wave is the larger player who can both shoot and create off the dribble.
Well, you got some freaks and some beasts out there, but
that's about it, guys. We gotta go. Listen.
It's over, Vic. You talk too fucking much.
LaMelo Ball.
You talk too much, brother. Listen. All right, brothers, we got to get out of here. Are you serious?
So I have to stand here today as what I was when I was born, a black man.
Your racism bounces off me, I'm bulletproof. Your prejudice gets deflected, I'm bulletproof. Your hatred can't penetrate me, I'm bulletproof. Our minds can't be shackled no more, nah, we know the truth. Yeah, from the spot that Malcolm stood, looking out through the window, I'm looking out over my hood.